Maybe you shouldn't do that with one of the better players in the game. I guess what were you thinking?
I don't care. He's old.
At the Crypto.com arena, Dillon Brooks was having words with Shannon Sharp, Hall of Famer and broadcast.
He gets his second three. A little side step in here. With a move by Brooks. It was deflected. It's loose. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on.
Thompson jumper. Got it.
Klay Thompson celebrating over the body of Dillon Brooks after he makes the shot.
That's the sixth technical foul on Golden State. Well, there's no doubt, and this again.
You can't make this stuff up sometimes in the NBA. It's what makes the drama of this league so great. But after a disappointing ending to the Memphis Grizzlies season in which they got taken out in the first round of the playoffs, losing to the LA Lakers despite finishing with the second seed in the West and having championship aspirations, the Grizzlies have said that under no circumstances will they be bringing back Dillon Brooks, who is set to become a free agent this offseason, and in fact, the only free agent on their roster who is not guaranteed beyond this season. Dillon Brooks, after trying so hard to become this villain in the NBA, trying to act hard, trying to be tough, trash talking on the court, off the court, all of the antics and drama, and trying to create this bad boy persona has backfired on him. And the team for which he plays for, and in all the exit interviews from the players themselves, none of them talked about Dillon Brooks being a part of their future. And wouldn't you know it, the front office felt the same way as well. And for a guy who probably thought he was going to be getting a big bag this offseason, now faces the possibility of having to take a steep discount to try and regain his reputation. And that's what we'll be talking about in this video. If you're new to the channel and you like this type of content, be sure to subscribe, as about 95% of you watching are not subscribed. And in return, I'll be providing more NBA content like this. Now, I just recently did a video on the Memphis Grizzlies and how their overconfidence and trash talking really backfired on them and how they showed up in the postseason. And yes, you have to keep in mind they were banged up. They didn't have some of their key rotational players like Steven Adams and Brandon Clark. Ja even missed one game, but they had their main guys. Morant was still there for the most part, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, and yes, even Dillon Brooks, they were available. And while I know the Grizzlies fans aren't going to like it, the Grizzlies did not show up well in the postseason, especially in an elimination game in which they got beat down by 40 points and looked like they had already checked out for the season and started planning their vacations. But the poor postseason performance aside, the Grizzlies were facing a culture crisis. What was once this fun, exciting, up-and-coming young team that a lot of people were rooting for to bring this small market franchise to relevancy quickly turned into one of the more hated teams in the NBA because of their antics both on and off the court. And it wasn't like they just became this hated team because of some narrative the media was trying to create. No, it was almost as if they wanted to be this villain of a team, as if they were trying and striving to be like the bad boy Pistons of the 1980s. Not saying they were as brutal as the Pistons of that time, since you can't pull a lot of the crazy stunts that the bad boys Pistons did in today's NBA, but rather the fact that they embraced the persona of being the hated team of the league. Ja flashing guns on social media, Dillon Brooks picking fights with what seemed like every player in the NBA, insulting them in post-game interviews, and the front office took a quick look at how things were trending with this team and they said, yeah, we've got to put an end to this. We don't want to be that team, and we certainly don't want to have a target on our backs that teams are looking to go after when we come to town. Now, it has been reported that this was a mutual decision and that Brooks wanted a bigger role that the Grizzlies simply couldn't offer him. With the way the rest of their lineup is structured, Brooks citing that he was mostly being used as a 3-and-D guy, shoot and play defense, and that he has more to offer as a basketball player than just that, which you can argue whether he does or not. I think most people would say Brooks is nothing more than a role player and isn't the type of guy that should expect some sort of expanded star level role. And while I'm sure some of that was the case in the Grizzlies not wanting to bring him back, the harsh language coming from them that under no circumstances will they be bringing him back sits a little different than this just being a disagreement on his overall role. Let's take a look at some of the antics from Brooks this season that probably were the real reason that led to this decision of the Grizzlies wanting to move on from him. You had the cheap shot hit to the groin on Donovan Mitchell, which led to the pair getting into a fight. Brooks called Theo Pinson a cheerleader for riding the bench for the Mavericks. Yeah, he even picked up a tee for mocking him doing a pom-pom dance celebration, which was actually his 18th technical on the season and resulted in a one-game suspension. Brooks got into it with Klay Thompson this season, saying that he sucks, which led to Thompson telling reporters that when Brooks retires, I don't think anyone will ever remember him ever again. Obviously, Brooks has gotten into it quite a bit with Draymond Green this season as well. Of course, Brooks also got into it with Shannon Sharpe sitting courtside, telling him to sit the F down. That incident led to multiple Grizzlies players exchanging words with Sharpe while the parties had to be separated, including Ja's dad, T. Morant, getting involved as well. You also had the incident, of course, where he pushed off on a Miami Heat cameraman, which led to the cameraman actually getting injured on said push. And yes, the most recent comments to reporters during the playoffs when he was talking about an exchange he had with LeBron James saying LeBron is old and that he doesn't respect anyone until they give them 40, which the Lakers then proceeded to beat the Grizzlies down by 40 points to close out the series. The antics aside though, let's also remember that while Brooks, yes, can be an offensive weapon with his outside shooting, this season in particular, he was especially bad, shooting the Grizzlies out of games, getting tunnel vision, focusing only on himself, and acting like he was Kobe Bryant out there trying to take over games. It got so bad that there were games where Dillon Brooks was being booed at home by Grizzlies fans because of his poor shooting. Get this, among the 200 qualifying players in the NBA, Brooks ranked 196th in true shooting percentage this season. He shot a poor 32% from 3 on 6 threes per game and had his lowest overall field goal percentage of his career, shooting 39% from the field on 13 attempts per game, and had one of the lowest PERs in the NBA for qualifying players. Safe to say, Brooks, between this fake villain persona he was trying to establish for his own publicity, combined with his lackluster performance this season, especially on offense, is the real reason for why the Grizzlies, under no circumstances, will be bringing him back next season. I will admit, I was a little surprised. I even said in my most recent video on the Grizzlies that I actually thought they would look to extend him because of their limited cap space and being able to maintain his bird rights. And even despite having a bad season, he's been with the organization his entire career and was a big part of what they built there. But I think it got to the point where the organization said, enough is enough. We can't have this type of behavior anymore. And while sure, there still remain question marks surrounding Ja's off-court behavior and how that impacts the overall team culture, Ja, on the other hand, is also insanely talented and has that leverage over someone like Dillon Brooks. So what's next for Brooks? We know he's not returning to Memphis. Where does he go from here? What team is going to want him? What team is going to be okay taking on the potential headache of Dillon Brooks, and what team actually has the cap space to be able to sign him, because I'm sure he's still going to be looking for a sizable payday. I've seen a lot of Bulls fans saying they should pursue Brooks, and as a Bulls fan, to that I say hell no, when the Bulls should be prioritizing shooting more than anything than bringing in a guy that had one of the worst true shooting percentages in the NBA and is a terrible culture fit. The Bulls wouldn't be that dumb to bring in Brooks given their needs on the roster, and to be honest, I see Brooks likely going to one of the few bad teams in the NBA that has cap space, unless of course Brooks is willing to take on a minimum contract to play for a contending team if he prefers to win over money. But Brooks strikes me as the type of guy who is looking to get paid and just have the freedom to do whatever he wants and have the green light on offense. And so if I had to take a guess, a probable landing spot for Brooks next season is going to be with a team like the Houston Rockets, maybe even the Charlotte Hornets. I just don't see that many teams wanting to take Brooks on their roster and having the requisite cap space to do so. Also, who knows, maybe this was a wake-up call for Brooks being too cocky and getting exposed in the playoffs that he decides to tone down the behavior and getting back to being a decent basketball player and focusing on winning. Have a hard time seeing that. Feel like he's just going to keep doubling down on his antics, but we'll have to wait and see. Where do you guys think Dillon Brooks will be playing next season? I know some of you have been saying in China. That would be funny, but let me know in the comments, and as always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.